Hello guys, welcome everybody. Today we're gonna be talking about the top 7 tanks are recommended for new players to grind and go for as a beginning, in War of Tanks. So I'm gonna start with the 705A. Probably people will be surprised and be like, what the heck? 705A is like probably one of the most forgiving tank in the game for new players. Has a lot of armor, has a decent gun, could be dear, but this line, if you go on the Russian line, the 705A probably will be the best tank to play for a new player starting in War of Tanks. The reason why I say that, it has a lot of armor and it can forgive a lot, starting from the ISM, 705A, 705 and 705A probably tier 10 is like probably this line, all of it will be forgiven for the new player. So no matter how many mistakes that new players will do, the 705A probably will be like, forgiven some of the mistakes. This tank has a really decent mobility and speed with a lot of armor, so brawling with this tank probably is the main thing why I'm saying this tank should be played, and that way new players will learn how to side scrape, how to engage with enemy targets, and how to learn take positions and hold them as much as you can. The tank comes in with 650 alpha, with a lot of some heroes to reach 700 and above, and some mini lowers for sure. But now this tank is legit one of probably my favorite heavy tanks in the game. This tank, the only weakest spot it has is lower plate, and pretty much if you are playing hold on and there's like no way to penetrate this tank unless you expose your lower plate. However, this tank is also called the king of side scraping in War of Tanks. Probably it's the best tank in the game to side scrape with so far. The gun will be a little bit derpy and troll, but again, in a close combat, this tank is gonna give you exactly what you're looking for and will perform very well. It's like impossible playing this tank and you will be legit not getting at least 4k damage or blocking 2k by armor. We had number 2 tank, and it's also another Russian heavy tank, and it's called the IS-4. The IS-4 is one of probably or the second strongest heavy tank on the Russian line when it comes to side scraping. I do highly recommend this tank or line to be played, the KV3, KV4, ST1 or STI, and the IS4. Even the T150, the tier 6 or KV1 tier 5 is very, very decent for new players to start playing and learn, how to play the game or improve even in the game. The IS-4 has very strong armor, and also it has a really good DPM and decent gun. When it comes to the heat round, it has pretty much really nice heat round penetration to mostly deal with any heavy tank. Similar to a 705A, the gun could be derpy and troll, but again, in close combat, this is a tank should be played. It's one of the tanks that when you play is pretty much impossible to not block at least 2k by your armor. As you see here, in one position, playing the IS-4 and pretty much doing exactly what I'm trying to do is like closing combat, brawling enemy, trying to side scrape and use the armor and the gun as much as possible. Let's go for number 3 tank. It's the IS-7, or another Russian heavy tank. The very interesting thing about the IS-7 is, like, compared to the IS-4 or 705A, is this tank has a mobility, it has an armor, and it has a really good sorry, a turret armor. It's probably one of the strong turret armor that doesn't have even weak spot, similar to 705A kinda. The thing about this tank is, like, has a little bit worse gun than most of the heavy tanks on the Russian line, but again, with the mobility and the armor on this tank is pretty good and recommended for new players to go for. Object 257 is also one of the strong tier 9 on the line. We have the T10, or sort of IS-3 is another tier 8 tank. The IS, pretty much the same line you're going for the 705A and IS-4 is starting from a tier 5 after the tier 5. So KV-1S, the T-150 will lead you to these tanks pretty much. And again, the whole line is pretty decent after tier 6s, or from the tier 6s or tier 5 even, still decent for new players. The unique thing about the IS-7 is it takes an initial positions very quick with the really good armor and can actually brawl the enemy immediately. Most of the time you even be there before the enemy will be at the positions you are going to. That's the unique thing about the IS-7, is mobility, armor, always. You can run away, you can rotate around, just like almost a medium tank, but actually you're doing it in a heavy tank. This goes around 60 to 65, and with the right equipment you go up to 70 km/h on a heavy tank. When you play the IS-7, most of the time you can't you need to load the Bream rounds, which is APCR. The reason why, because the AP has only 250 penetration, which is probably too low for tier 10. Again, that's how it works with IS-7 most of the time. It's one of the heavy tanks too. If you just hide your lower plate, pretty much it's gonna be hard to pen unless you get overrun or exposing your whole armor. What's make me love about this tank is really the ability to rotate around the map in no time, to the amount of the speed that has as a heavy tank. It's pretty much, it feels like I'm playing a medium tank, but actually I'm doing it in heavy. The only thing about this tank is really weak is side scraping. You do not want to side scrape in the IS-7 no matter what. You always want to reverse side scrape due to the whole armor, or the upper whole armor of the IS-7 angle is really weak, and once you side scrape, you're pretty much gonna get penned any shot. And this tank, it has a nickname. We call it the King of W King in War of Tanks, pretty much due to all the benefits had. Armor, mobility, so priority. Number 4 tank, we have the Object 277, another Russian heavy tank close to the IS-7. The line of the Object 277 is one of a decent line, just like the IS-7 line. Pretty much the same line will lead you to the 277 as well after the tier 8 IS-3. The tier 10 we have over here probably is just playing with tier 10 is just like you playing 277 but in tier 9 instead of tier 10. Very similar to the whole armor, and the guns of these two tanks is really decent. The 277 gun is better than the IS-7 gun. The difference between these two heavy tanks are the 277 has less armor than the IS-7 but better gun than the IS-7. Meanwhile, the IS-7 has the opposite, the better armor and the worse gun. However, the 277s is recommended due to mobility, the armor, the 50, let's say, percent type of 50-50 armor, but it played like an IS-7 still, and also it has a really strong turret armor, even though it has a little bit weak spot here, which is the cupola. However, I do highly recommend playing this tank or going for it because it's really worth it. It has nice DPM, probably like 9.7 second reload time, and has a decent alpha 490. So yeah, with high penetration heat round. Just like I said about the IS-7, 277 is cannot be the tank that you want to side scrape in. Again, the king of side scraping is the Object 705A and the IS-4. And you can also reverse side scrape in the IS-4. However, the 277 and IS-7, you should never try to side scrape unless you are doing it against lower tier venues such as tier 8s or tier 9s. Other than that, is recommended to really just reverse side scrape in 277, no matter what. Pushing in the 277 is cannot be as strong as pushing with the IS-7, but it's also still possible. When we say 277 has less armor than IS-7, it doesn't mean it doesn't have any armor. As you see here, I'm trying to poke a specific angle, and I'm not doing a side scraping, I'm doing a reverse side scraping. And also you need to be really careful when you reverse side scraping. If you do it wrong, then you can pretty much gonna get penned every shot. This is exactly what I mean with side scraping in pretty much IS-7 277. Again, that's the only way to not actually get penned or reduce the chances of getting penned in these tanks. You could also do it in IS-4 in specific areas or positions or situations. But the IS-4 would feel more comfortable to side scrape in than these two tanks, that's 277 and IS-7. Let's go for number 5 line that is recommended also is the Super Conqueror, the British heavy line. This line is so much fun to play after, I think, from tier 7 and above. The whole line is fun to play. However, the Super Conqueror is a really good and strong hold down tank. It has a really good DPM, reload time, and really good accurate gun with a decent speed. I would say is a little bit slower heavy tank than the other tanks that I mentioned, but it really has a strong hold on turret armor, and gun duration, gun handling is amazing. So it's gonna be really helpful for new players to start playing this tank. So British line again, Super Conqueror is one of the best, I'd say, lines in the nation. Starting from the tier 8, Blackburn, Churchill, I think even with Churchill 1, the tier 5, is gonna be one of like very forgivable to play, you know, like no matter what you do or mistakes, the armor will forgive you kinda on these tanks. Starting with Conqueror, the tier 8, this tank is really just played like similar. Starting it is gonna lead you to learn how to play hold on tanks pretty much until you reach the Super Conqueror. The tier 9 Conqueror is also very similar just to the tier 10. It has a nice hold on, nice gun duration, and the armor on it a little bit less than the tier 10 because it's a, you know, tier 9. but it's still very strong armor to play with hold on positions. However, let's take a look on the S-Kong, how it's played. This tank likes to find positions where it, like windows or rocks or anything that is, you can just hide your lower plate most of the time, even upper plate. All your job is gonna be focused on your turret and just aiming and pointing your gun into the enemy, and that's it. This tank will be targeted by artillery too much just because of this reason, is being a very strong hold down tank. As you see in this one, I just trying to take a hold down position at the window and just poke up my turret and use my gun accuracy and, you know, all the ability that I have to put the most damage I could possibly do. It has 6.9 second or 6.7 second reload time. You can lower it to 6.5 with the right equipment. It just DPM monster. Hitting weak spots with a Super Conqueror gun is probably one of the easiest thing to do. I have to be honest, like it's like hitting weak spots is really easy to do with this gun. Side-scraping with a Super Conqueror is still possible, but you need to be careful doing it. I just prefer to always stay hold on no matter what. If needed to side-scrape, then you have no option. It's good to go for it. Super Conqueror is still not a bad tank to side-scrape with. You just need to be careful doing it because it's not an IS-4, it's not a 745A. If you don't do it like really carefully, you might, you know, kind of mess up and, you know, it's like getting pinned. Meanwhile, 705A or IS-4, even if you make a mistake while side scraping, it still can forgive you and bounce some shots. Imagine you're playing a heavy tank and you're just putting a shot on the enemy targets every 6.5 seconds. It's pretty good, right? It will make your day maybe. And this is why we call it the DPM monster heavy tank. I do highly recommend playing the S-Kong and loading full APCR, which is the premium rounds, because I don't know, you can still use AP round. I do prefer to use APCR for the high shell velocity and also the higher penetration. Number 6 line or tank recommended is also another DPM monster. Usually I think it used to be one of the classic tanks in World of Tanks is the E5. It's got buffed again and is actually in the current meta 2023. This tank is one of the tanks that is almost popular to play. You don't see that a lot due to the S-Kong being in action more than the E5. But I do like the E5 still to the amount of armor it has, to the nice DPM. It has almost close to S-Kong. Reload time is 6.8. You can drop it to with the right equipment. And the E5, it has a strong armor. The only issue about the E5 is has the cupola weak spot, and the way to play the E5 is to not poke from the cupola side or side scrape at all. the only way to do it is just try to sideskip and poke from the right side of the tank, which is it doesn't have a cupola weak spot on. The mobility of the E5 is really decent for a heavy tank, and I just like to play it with turbo all the time, or mostly any heavy tank I played with turbo. However, let's have a look on the E5 line. Lower plate is pretty much the only weakest spot, and it's kinda troll and bouncy, or sometimes with specific angles if you're angling it, and most people will actually try to target your cupola. Again, try to play it from the right side mostly, and do not poke from the left side or sideskip from the left side. And sidescaping in E5 is really not bad, is still decent, just similar to the S-Conk. You need to be careful while doing it. Take a look on the line of the E5. Is pretty much, it's all the line is decent, I would say, starting with tier 5 and tier 6. T29 is probably, this tank is like, I don't know, I feel like this is probably the best tier 7 tank in the game in the current meta. It's very good to play and learn to play it hold on. And the T32 is got buffed the last few patches. I think the last 2 patches got buffed. T32 is also a nice tank to play. Pretty much has the same scenario of E5 to play it. It's a hold on tank too. E5 is a hold on tank. Don't get me wrong. The only thing is like about the cupola, you need to be careful while doing all that. The M103 probably the only pain to play on this line. Not really pain, but due to the cupola being in the middle, and this is a big target, you know. But is it worth it to play? I would say yes, it is worth it to play, because this tank, it has still decent gun. It has you know, decent long time. Armor works on it, but again, the weakest spot, you cannot do much about it. And the only way to play this tank is by shooting and trying to raise your gun up. That way you try to block your weak spot with your gun. That way your enemy doesn't shoot it, or shoot your gun instead, and you will block it, you know. Similar to the E5, you can do that too. Now, why do I recommend this line? Because it's really decent for new players. It has good guns, and mostly in War tanks we need good guns, like no matter what, right? You do not want like a tank you want to struggle with, big bloom, and you know, you cannot, it have bad accuracy, and you're gonna really struggle. This is why I recommend these tanks to play, because due to the guns accuracy and how accurate the guns on these tanks. In the E5, you can take a loadout tab of like, if you want 50-50 AP and heat. Since I have a really good DPM reload time, I would like to carry more heat rounds to a high pen, but the AP rounds has decent penetration too. But again, I like to take like 7 or 5 AP rounds and rest heat rounds and few HE, and just go rock and roll with the DPM. Pretty much is another DPM monster, just like the S-Conk we spoke about earlier. When you have like a DPM like this on a heavy tank with decent armor, you can pretty much kind of defend yourself by yourself. The only thing I forgot to mention about the S-Conk and the E5, they are both like to get armor-racked a lot. So this is why I highly recommend to try to not get or take shots, take less shots, stay hold on, just, you know, play carefully, because these tanks like to get armor-racked probably every shot, and you will be lucky if you don't get armor-racked full HP. The gun of the E5 is probably one of my favorite. It's really accurate. I do love playing with this tank a lot, just because of the gun and DPM on it. Plus it does have armor. As you see in this situation, I am kinda playing my own position, and the enemy decided to yellow in. I do have the DPM, I do have the armor, I can still defend myself by myself, right? So this is the unique thing about this tank, is the DPM. You can put as many shots as possible before even your death. In this battle, pretty much I blocked like around like 2.2k, close to 3k. Again, armor just, you know, works, especially in top tier matchmaking. Against tier 10 is still there, but again, I do really recommend the E5. I don't know, I just like this tank. Number 7 tank or line recommended to play is the E100, the German line. The reason why I do recommend this line is because of the amount of good guns it has on pretty much all tiers, starting from tier 6. The E100 line is probably one of the most enjoyable line to play and grind. Again, once you start the DK, from here you take in Tiger 1, Tiger 2, E75, and ending with the E100. You will enjoy this line no matter what, especially starting from tier 7. The Tiger 1, Tiger 2, it has probably one of the amazing guns on the German line. Talk about only the heavy line. However, E75 is probably the best tier 9 in the game, I would say. That is really enjoyable to play. Playing these tanks pretty much all about side scraping, engagement, brawling. It's just similar to the ever heavy lines I just recommended. Let's have a look on the E100. Playing the E100 will be just like very different than the ever heavies I recommended. Side scraping is a side scraping, but the turret is the most weak spot is to penetrate, and lower plate for sure. How do you play the 100 is by side scraping, which is for sure hiding your lower plate, and angling your turret. Pretty much you want to angle your turret this side like this, and not keeping it facing the enemy all the time. You only want to face the enemy one time when you are loaded and ready to shoot, and after that you pull your turret to the side to try to make it look a little bit angled like this, so you don't get penetrated. The A100 can be played with big gun and small gun. I do highly like the big gun, and I do really recommend trying it out if you ever trying to get the A100. But the small gun, it has really good DPM with 530 average damage, and it has an APCR 311 penetration. Meanwhile, the Heatron gun is with Alpha 750, which is the derp gun, and it has 334 penetration. This is why I like to play the big gun, because it has Heatron and higher pen. But again, the ever gun has 9-second reload time, could go down to that's how good the DPM can be on the E100 gun. I do like playing slow tanks. I do like playing super heavy tanks. I do not mind them at all. It just feels so good to go with a lot of HP, such as like 2900 HP on a tank like this, and just go and outbrawl the enemy with it. Trading with A100 is so much fun when you have the big gun, which is 750 Alpha. It feels so good when you hyrule with this gun too. By side scraping, this is exactly what I meant, is like make sure the turret doesn't look directly to the enemy if you are not ready to shoot them. That way you do not get targeted on the turret. Take it easy, take it slow when you play tanks like this, because you do not want to push always. unless you are sure you have the support to do that. We have another tank, and it's the last tank I would recommend for new players to get, and you shouldn't go for it as a first tank because it needs some type of, you know, is not that tank of like one of these easy tanks to play, let's say, right? It's an autoloader DZ55. It's a heavy tank. It have a 2 shots magazine. It do like 490 per shot. It pretty much you do like 1k damage per clip. This tank is like a really mobile tank with decent armor and a really nice gun accuracy. It can be derpy and troll a little bit, but again, it has an APCR shell with I think it's 306 penetration. The APSR shell. However, why do I recommend this tank? Because it's really good. It can be busted tank a little bit in the current meta, especially to delete half HP of pretty much any tank, right, in tier 10. Beside the super heavies for sure. The line, let's speak about the line of this tank. It's a little bit, I would say, painful to play until you reach the tier 9. The tier 8, it could be decent, but it is not exactly something will be really, I don't know, like easy to grind, I would say. But once you reach the tier 9, you'll be a little bit more comfortable to play with a tier 9. It has 2 shots too, just like similar to a tier 10. Once you reach the tier 10, the VZ55A, you will have the fun and the enjoyable times with this tank. However, it has 2 guns, the single shot guns and the burst guns, or sorry, the magazine with 2 shells. I would recommend always this gun. Yeah, I would say if you want to go for it, try it out, but do not try it before trying the Everlines first, because this one should be always the last thing to get. The unique thing about this tank is the mobility and the way I can drop 2 shells that fast with 2 seconds between shells into a clip. And armor, it's really on it still, but you don't want to always rely on the armor that much. It's one of the tanks can be played hold down to, but it has a weaker spot, which is the cupola, just like any other vehicles in the game. I hope so you guys enjoyed watching. Please subscribe to our channel and check us on twitch.tv/jman_tutors. I'll see you guys next VOD. Take care. Have a good one.